In our previous video, we talked about technical analysis, we talked about fundamental analysis, and then we also talked, how technical analysis differs from fundamental analysis. In this video, we'll talk about one of the very important aspect of technical analysis, that is trends. Everybody in the stock market is interested in one and only one thing, and that is the stock price. Everybody is interested to know that if the stock price will go up, if the stock price will go down, or will it be stable, whatever it is. In simple English, if you put, everybody is interested in knowing the direction in which the stock price will move. And this is what exactly is called as trends. Trends means that basically it's a direction in which the stock price will be actually moving. Now that direction can be upward movement or that direction can be a downward movement. Now that's a very simple definition which we talked about, that trend is nothing but it's a direction in which the stock price move. Now let me complicate that sentence further. Trend is nothing but it's a plot of stock price versus a period. So in other words, if you want to see a trend, you need to draw a graph which is stock price versus period. So here's my y-axis, here's my minus y-axis, here's my plus x-axis, and here's my minus x-axis. In case people who are new to maths or new to graphs, I'll say that please go and do revisit your textbooks again, your childhood textbooks, because we are going to use those fundamentals over here. So if you want to see a trend, then you have to plot stock price. So you can take the stock price on the y-axis if you wish, or if you want, you can also take on the x-axis if you wish, and the period. Now this period, it can be minutes, seconds, it can be days, it can be weeks, it can be years. So it really depends, what you are looking for. So in other words, if you want to see a trend, or if you want to visualize a trend, you need to draw a graph which is stock price versus period. Now there are three kinds of trends in the stock market: a uptrend, a downtrend, and sideways. So let's discuss about it in more details. Now before I start speaking about the three different kinds of trends, let me just correct this graph, or let me just make this graph more focused from the technical analysis point of view. Now in technical analysis or in stock market, you never have negative stock values, or you never have negative periods. So in other words, this region of the graph in technical analysis will be completely excluded. Now let's discuss about the first type of trend. So here we have on the y-axis, the stock values marked 10, 20, 30, 40. And then here on the x-axis we have weekdays. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Now let's say we have a stock called as XYZ. On Monday, let's say the stock value is 10. And let's say, it does very good and it becomes 15 on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, it moves towards 20. Then on Thursday, it goes towards, let's say, 25. And then on Friday, it moves towards 30. Now, if you plot this graph, you can see that the graph is actually moving towards uptrend. So this is the first type of trend, that is uptrend. Now let's say there is one more stock called as ABC. So this was, let's say, XYZ, and there is one more stock called as ABC. On Monday, the ABC stock was at 50. On Tuesday, the ABC stock came to, let's say, 45. On Wednesday, the ABC stock came to 40. On Thursday, let's say it was very bad, he moves towards 30. Now if you plot this, what it means is your ABC stock is in down trend. So when the stock price is heading towards a direction which is increasing the stock value, with respect to period, it is called as an uptrend, and vice versa. When the stock value actually starts decreasing, with respect to your period, then it is called as the downtrend. Now let's say there is one more stock called as PQR. On Monday, the value of PQR was 10. On Tuesday, the value of PQR was again 10. Wednesday 10, Thursday 10, Friday 10. If we plot this graph, in other words, this value is constant throughout the weekdays. So this type of trend is called as sideways or trendless. So in other words, there are three kinds of trends in the stock market: uptrend, downtrend, and trendless. Now these three main categories of trends, that is uptrend, downtrend, and sideways, have again three different kinds of flavors of trends. The first one is a long trend, a long-term trend. The second one is a short-term trend, and the third one is a intermediate trend. Now let's consider the first trend, long-term trend. Okay. Now let's consider, that there is a stock called as ABC. Now you can see that I have plotted, here on the y-axis again I have the stock price, and on the x-axis I have period. Now this period is for 2 years. So you can see that I have January, February, March, April, and then 2010, and then again January 2011, February 2011 till December 2011. So it is a 2 years of plot. Now let's say we have a stock called as ABC. The value of this stock ABC is, let's say, 100, on the start of the year. On January 2010, this stock value comes to, let's say, 90. Let's say on mid of November, this stock comes approximately, let's say October, let's say it comes to 70. On December 2010, let's say it comes to 50. On, let's say, March 2011, it comes to 40. Now, if you plot this graph, you can see that there is a downtrend actually going on. Now this is called as a long-term downtrend. Long-term downtrend. Now why this is a long-term downtrend? Because the period it has crossed is more than 1 year. So a long-term trend, spans for 1 to 2 years, more than a year. Now again, this is a downtrend. There's a possibility there can be uptrend also. Okay. So long-term trend are trends, which moves the stock price into a specific direction for at least 1 or 2 years, more than 1 or 2 years. So when the span of the period is 1 or 2 years and the stock is continuously moving towards that direction, then that term is called as a long-term trend. Now that again, as I said, long-term, you can have a long-term downtrend, you can have a long-term uptrend, and again you can have a long-term sideways trend or trendless. Now let's say you have one more stock, which is, let's say it's at value, let's say 40. On week 1 of January 2010, this value becomes 30. On week 2, this value becomes 20. On the last month of January, the value becomes 10. So on week 1 it was 30, on week 2 it became 20, on week 3 it became, let's say, 10. And suddenly on the first week of February, the value again started increasing. So it went to 20, it went to 30. Now if you see here, if you plot this graph, from week 1, from the first week till the third of the week, the stock was in a downtrend. So this trend is called as a short-term downtrend. So short-term trends are those trends, which lasts for 2 weeks to 3 weeks. So long-term trends are those trends which last from 1 year to 2 years, while short-term trends are those trends which last from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. So you can see that at the third week, the stock actually started moving up. So this was a short-term downtrend. Now let's say you have one more stock, at the start of 2010, the value is 10. So let's say the value is 10. On January again the value is 10. On February again the value is 10. Let's say this continues till, let's say, August, approximately August. And then from August onwards, suddenly the stock starts increasing. Now this period, which is approximately 9 months, this period is called as a intermediate trend. Okay. So intermediate trends, they last from 3 weeks to 9 months. Short-term trend, they last from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. While long-term trend, they last from 1 year to 2 years. So the main categories of trends are downtrend, uptrend, and sideways. And again, those categories are further divided into 3 different kinds of flavors: long-term trend, short-term trend, and intermediate trend. Long-term trend actually longs for 1 to 2 years. Short-term trend, again, it goes approximately from 2 weeks to 3 weeks, while intermediate trends, they last from 3 weeks to 9 months. Again, this long-term trends and short-term trends, they will again have different flavors. So long-term downtrend, long-term uptrend, long-term sideways trend, short-term downtrend, short-term uptrend. So each of these flavors are again having different kinds of flavors. So that brings us to the end of the video. So in this video, what we did is we first started with defining what is trends. After that, we talked about the 3 important classification of trends. And further, for each of these classifications, we defined 3 different kinds of variations of trend. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. In the coming up video, we're going to talk about 2 important aspects in technical analysis: support and resistance. Thank you very much.